Football then and now, a fun look at football nostalgia and the modern game intertwined. Join us.
Welcome. This is episode 6 of Football Then and Now, a nostalgic look at football, but also we touch upon stuff that is currently going on in football. A good blend, a good mix. And waiting in the wings is my co-host and my cousin. It's Mr. Chris Hume on the show today. How are we, Chris?
Yeah, good. Happy it's a Friday, mate.
It's nice, isn't it, mate? I'm on a split
shift. It is. I like a good Friday, mate.
I wish I was finished now, mate, for the day. I'd have a few beers, But we've got a special guest waiting in the wings, and it is none other than Mr. John Scott of John Scott Media, a big Spurs fan, but also a big football management game fan, which is what we're going to talk about today. Some of our favourite games. How are you, John? How's things?
I'm good, mate. I just want to concur. I'm happy it's Friday as well. I'm on the same boat as Chris. I'm happy. Apologies over to you, Stu, that you've got to work a little bit more, but you'll get there.
I'm not apologetic at all.
I've got a couple of hours, boys. It's not too bad. I'm not working right the way through. So we've obviously spoken off camera about this. We're very big on our football management games from the past and the present, of course. And John, you sent in your stuff to me, and I'm going to start off with a game that you and Chris both liked, actually. I'm going to go to 0102 Championship Manager, just because both of you like this game. What was it for you with Championship Manager 0102? I know you still play it as well now. What did you gravitate to with that, John? What was appealing to you with this game?
Well, first of all, I love all the Championship Managers in general anyway, but this particular version, it seems like before they obviously split off and side games went one way, and with Sega obviously, and then Championship Manager kept the name, but it was never the same after that, I can assure you. This for me was like the ultimate version of the Championship Manager, almost like combinated on like all the good work they've done like prior to make this sort of version of the game. And I mean, I love the time period as well. That's why I keep playing it still today, because I just love the players in it, and it's just, mate, it's just so nostalgic. It's basically, this is a Championship Manager just before they sort of introduced the whole dynamic of watching it visually. So you're still reading off, but I'm telling you, mate, they were so creative, and I can't say enough good things. There's still a massive cult following of that game. They still play network games up to this day that I've been a part of here and there. And honestly, the Italian league especially, absolutely my favourite. And surprised there with you, Chris, that you're a fan as well. It's good to hear.
Listen, like yourself, I live for management games. So, Championship Manager, we get, as you alluded then, to Football Manager. They take my life. Like they are, a game where you can't sit down and have 2 games, because that 2 games turn into 4 games, turns into 10 games. And before you know it, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're on to your 4th season with a certain club. But I do agree, 0102 was the pinnacle of Championship Manager. They had the start, didn't they, in the 90s. And when they got to this point here is where, as John said, they start implementing bits and pieces to the game, stats, scouting. Getting to talk to your board was an amazing thing as well, because we didn't have that previously, and the players as well. And think of the players, Samba, was it Fleck from Celtic? All these players who were amazing on the game were the ones, funny enough, Stuart, that actually didn't do anything in real life, but there were players in that game that are now, massive. And to point this one out for you, it's the first time they ever put the United States League in there as well. So don't forget, 0102 was the Freddie Adu effect. And we all know how many people have bought Freddie Adu. No one can ever lie and say they never bought Freddie Adu on that game, which they bloody well did. But for me, because I remember me and you played this one a lot, Stuart, up and down each of his houses. This was the pinnacle, and this is where Idios and Sports Interactive really made a game that will live on forever. And as John said, so many people are still playing it. It just shows you how big of a game it is.
I like the text format, as much as I like seeing a match going on, I'd quite happily just play with text. I think just because playing the games that I played, which I'll speak about after because I want to get your guys' other picks through before mine. I love the text element still to this day. I mean, a lot of modern players younger to us probably think, "What the hell's he going on about?" You want to see it in a visual sense on the pitch, doing what they're doing. But what a game it was! What a game it was! And like you say, I'd love to get involved in those networks. Actually, John.
And you can download it for free. FM Scout, it's an official site and it's available for free. So anyone can play that if they're interested. Absolute recommend. Just the players that you had. Like obviously it's peak Manchester United, no doubt about it. They were like very much on top in that time. But talking about players that went on to do well, few names. Daniel De Rossi. He starts at like 16 on that game. He becomes everything and more that he became in real life. And I think Xavi Alonso as well. He's like 17 on the game. He ends up becoming a hell of a player. So I have to say, from a scouting point of view and a database point of view, there's probably nothing that beats the Championship Manager FM database in terms of anything else we talk about today. Like even clubs now today use that as a scouting network because it's so good. You know what I mean? They've got so many bodies all over the world. I don't know how the hell they get certain stats. It's unbelievable.
Teams are saying for people to do a season, aren't they? Then you can take on the club as well, like officially take on a team from doing a season or whatever you do. How mad is that? We wouldn't have been thinking about that 25, 30 years ago playing these games, would you? You just never would have thought that would have been a thing. Crazy, absolutely crazy. Was Kennedy Bakayoko coming through on this at Hammarby?
Yeah, Kennedy was there,
He was one of my favourite players, signed in numerous times. And he went on to play for a lot of different clubs. But he was like a hot shot player on that game that I used to love signing from Hammarby there in Sweden. So
yes.
He's part Turkish, part Swedish, wasn't he?
Don't forget Julius Agahauer as well.
Yes.
He was a goal machine. And then there was Fernando, is it Cavanaghi from Argentina? He was James Royal commented on my post for this today, and he said he was a beast, and he was a beast. But you know what? There was so many good Argentinian players.
Was it Claudio Caniggia? Was it Claudio Caniggia?
Yeah,
because obviously he went on to Scotland later on. You know, he was up in Scotland for a while off the back of that. And I mean, he was playing World Cups in the 90s, wasn't he, for Argentina?
But you could find so many youngsters. I think Higuain was it Boca, and he was 16 on the. I'm sure he was.
I'm not sure if it's that version or another one, but yeah, there's. I want to give a cheap plug here if I can. There's a particular channel that I've been watching for a while. It's basically Love CM3, and this guy, he literally takes on the most obscure teams you would never want to be half the time, like very low level clubs from Sweden and. Honestly, like the amount of years and stuff he puts in it is amazing. So if you're into that stuff, you just like, because sometimes for me, I just like watching people play it. It's just as good sometimes. So if you want that point of view, take full advantage. But lastly, what I will say about this game, just to finish up, is that the other wonderful thing about this, I only actually realised very recently, is, I don't know if you remember this, Chris, but you've got this drop-down menu, and actually some of the clubs have this huge history archive with the club, and you can read a whole backlog of archive about all your favorite clubs that goes back to when they were formed. And it's just it's like an encyclopedia. It's crazy. They don't do that now, but it's just another added feature that they have in that game.
They've cut it down. They've cut it down a lot. Now with the recent football managers, you get a brief, don't you, of the trophies, the ground, and then maybe a tiny bit of a history. But I do know what you're talking about.
Sure.
That was quite insightful. You know, when you're picking a club you've never seen before, and you want to know about a bit of the history, so you can sort of in your head, thinking I'm going to save this club, but in your head you do this sort of press conference, and everyone does that. I don't believe anyone doesn't do that when they play this game. But you put it in your head, you read the history, and in your head you're like, right, press conference, such and such. I'm going to do this, but I remember when they did this. Yeah, they did a lot of different things that you kind of do miss that they don't do now. But obviously, I understand the times and the elements they have to put into these games in this time as well.
I love the modern ones, don't get me wrong, but I do like the nostalgic ones. Moving on, another game that Mr. Scott has selected. Me and Chris played this. Chris had a copy of it. Does it go by Ultimate Soccer Manager 2? Because obviously
It does.
It does, doesn't it? Because you abbreviated it to USM2, a game that John also likes, but we played it as well, Chris, because you had it. I've got LMA Manager, the wrong one there. Here we go. A bit of teletext there.
Mate, I love that.
With the old USM, a bit of nostalgia there. We all love teletext, so they incorporated that into the game. Again, John, I'm going to ask you, what was it with this one for you that you loved and enjoyed about it?
So basically, this is not probably at the level of a championship manager by any means, but, and it's a big but, when I first played this, I saw it ran to my cousins actually, and I didn't really have a PC growing up, so I'd have to go to him. And by the way, that's just such a great shot. That's why I want to talk about this game. It's those things, the fact that you have the ability to, attempt rigging a game, and you can get caught out for it as well. And you'll find yourself in the newspaper.
They were obviously they knew what was coming in Syria,
exactly.
This is the precursor to the Syria shit that was going on.
Indeed, they knew. But basically, the real reason I love this game is I think this is just like the most probably. I mean, you got LMA that came a little bit later, but for me, this was just so visually immersive. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you had all these like displays, you could just click on that TV screen there and take you to teletext. You had a newspaper article that come out every week. And your training ground, you could go and talk to the bank manager. You could build your stadium and all the facilities around it. So it was kind of like a bit of a role of a director of football back then, as well as everything else. But just the little quirkiness of it, and you could mess about with the tickets, the sponsorships. You could even go to like the hot dog stands and chuck them up a bit on price to try and get your money in. But yeah, it's just pure nostalgia for me. This was like an age thing, and yeah, it just took me in. It sucked me in so much, and it still holds up quite well. I would say you get like a decent season out of it before you start to find it a bit repetitive. But it's definitely, if nobody's checked it out, again, this is another game you can get for free. All you've got to do is download DOSBox, and it's available on there for free. Worth mentioning. Before I'm sure you guys will talk, but worth mentioning that obviously there was a USM before this one that was pretty good, but this was like that little bit more better. And there was also a USM 98, which also I'm quite a big fan of. But USM 2 was the one I probably played the most. But amazing that you guys were playing it as well, because I personally don't know that many people that played this game, because it was one of those ones that fell by the wayside.
Oh, sorry, John, I jumped in there. How did you get hold of it? Because I just remember you started playing it, and you were like, you need to play this. So how did you get hold of that copy? Can you remember?
I actually had a copy, didn't I? I did have the actual.
It was copy, definitely 100%. Yeah, I remember.
I think it was through magazines, because obviously there was no YouTube, but we didn't be able to go anywhere to actually physically watch it. You had to sort of read magazines and then go off other people's hearsay, because I didn't know anyone else playing it but me and you, Stuart. You know what I mean? And it's great that John was obviously doing it as well. It would have been quite interesting if we knew each other all back then. You know what I mean? Because it would have you'd have more of a conversation about it than just me and you, Stuart, because we didn't know one else played it. But I think it was through a magazine. And my friend, another Stuart, had it on a copy as well. And he was dreadful at it. And I think, besides playing FIFA or PES, management games have always, and I think you would agree, Stuart, it's been our bread and butter. Like, if we were a kid and we picked a game to play, it wouldn't be an actual visualize FIFA or, like I say, PES. We'd be playing a management game, and we put our heads together and we go and do what we need to do. This one was different because, as John said, there was so many different things that were quirky about it. Building a ground, whatever manager game at that time, could you physically put your input building a ground? Obviously, I know you can now, but back then it wasn't heard of. No. Championship manager, football manager, you have to ask. You're not really allowed to put how many seats or how big you want the ground. This is where you could literally go, right, I want 100,000 seats. Let's go. But it really worked on the incomes and outgoings of the money. So you really had to be, really, sure that you could do these sort of things. Otherwise, they'd sack you. Because if you remember back in the day, even if it wasn't your fault, if your football team or whatever would go and in administration, you'd be the one getting sacked, and you'd be like, "Hold on a minute, you know what I mean? That's your problem. That's not mine. I just won you a trophy, and you're sacking me for it." But they were the quirkinesses of it, and as John said, there's things you could do on there. You still to this day, you don't see on any, well, not say Football Manager, but management games. You don't see it. You miss them sort of things where you could really interact with it. You're not just a manager. You feel like you're the chairman as well. Like you run the club. It's not just being a manager.
I remember signing Jörg Heinrich on that. So he was either at Dortmund or he was at Fiorentina. I remember him coming.
Fiorentina it was.
I used to loan him. God knows, I don't even think I was Everton, but it always sticks to me. Good old Jörg Heinrich coming in. But like you were saying, John, just it was ahead of its time, and it is vastly underrated as a football management game. Like I'd say to young people who are into it, like they'd play this. I think they'd enjoy it. I think it's not the go-to, is it, by any means? It really isn't. But
it does. It's another lovely throwback to that 90s era of football that I know us three definitely enjoy the most, and you get a lot out of that. But yeah, the amount you can do was insane. Like the tangible, the fact that you can, and also they had really good, like legit sponsors on it. You wouldn't get away with that today, but they actually had brands and logos were on it. You could get sponsored by anybody. But I believe the developers of that game, they were actually into like building games in general. So that's how they sort of incorporated this world building of the stadium and making stands and all the rest of it. And there was a heck of a lot of choice in it. It weren't like, you just upgrade it and it looks one way. You could change it all sorts of different ways. And it's quite unique, really.
Ideal and fantastic. I think we've covered that well, really, between us. Because I wonder whether was it copied onto mine on the hard drive. Like I'm going to talk about CM 97-98 in a bit. Did I just need that disc once and it was on my hard drive, or did I always take your copy? I can't remember.
Back in that one where you just said then, is it 97-98?
Yeah,
it was just a one disc install.
Yeah.
And it stayed. It was like, you didn't need a disc like you do now.
Did I need it? Did I need your disc every time a USM?
No.
Right.
It was the same again. It just installed once you put it in. It installed onto your desktop, and then it was there. Then
how good was that? How good was that? Like, imagine
pass it on.
The piracy now. Oh my God, it's totally different, isn't it? Moving on, I'm going to go to a console-based game. Not one of the first management games on console, because I'm going to talk about one after. But LMA Manager, obviously PlayStation. Very famous, and we've had comments about this as well. But I know, Chris, you selected LMA Manager, so it'd be nice to hear about your memories of LMA Manager, man.
Well, first and foremost, Codemasters now make Formula One that have just been Codemasters as a company have just been bought out by EA, and I like their games as well. You can do a bit of management with that, and they just obviously released a Formula One Manager game now of Codemasters. But I don't know enough to be a manager of a Formula One. But with LMA, and it's hot, it's a tongue twister, isn't it? LMA Manager. I have to say it slow. This again incorporated grounds as well, and a bit different to what we said before. But this was they spent a lot of time. You could do a lot of stuff with the ground. Again, you could reshape it to look like Camp Nou, the Bernabeu. You could go to say Old Trafford. You could shape it into any other way you wanted it. But the gameplay was amazing. Obviously when we first started on like Championship Manager, we were watching dots with me going around the pitch. But with this, you actually saw the players in it, and the graphics for what it was back then was really, really good. Obviously there's some issues here and there because the size of the game, with leagues and what have you, wasn't as big as what you would get if you were playing it on PC, I guess. But it was innovated for just being an all-round brilliant manager game, and they took everything I think that's been out previously and then built their own, but modernized that as a game. And I think like they made it harder, so it wasn't as easy to be a Manchester United or Real Madrid and just go railroad the league. They make things adapt with your tactics, which I see Football Manager pretty much done now with their last two. And it was just like I say, you could do a lot of different things. Like with USM, then you could go and buy logos and get sponsorships of LMA, flipping L. But it was just amazing. And don't forget, they went up to, I think, 2008, I think, was the last one they ever did. Before, obviously, I think Codemasters bowed out, I think, in the fourth installment. And then, obviously, they went on to do Formula One. But this, as a console game, other than Premier Manager, because we all had Premier Manager, this was I'd say, the pinnacle of management games on a console before the Football Manager came on.
I didn't like it later on. I did not like playing management games on consoles. There were certain ones which just did not port over from the computer. I know it sounds daft. Weirdly, having a controller and doing it, I preferred the mouse and the keyboard. That's what I liked. I know I'm going off on a tangent here a little bit.
No, I think the same.
When they ported them, there was a lot that. Going back to LMA was fantastically done, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We were playing 2-player mode on that as well, weren't we, Chris? I remember.
Yeah, two teams, yeah.
Which was, we weren't having to be a manager and an assistant on one team, which was great.
Like we've always done, yeah.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. John, your memories of LMA, did you play it?
Mate, it's amazing you're speaking about. I had this same chat yesterday with my cousin. We were talking about Codemasters and what a fabulous developer they were, and all their great games. I wasn't a big cricket fan, but I used to love Brian Lara for some reason.
Brilliant game, absolutely brilliant.
But honestly, any games that you saw with Codemasters on, you knew you were going to get a quality game. They always had a really good track record. And for me, the thing that stands out the most with LMA Manager is that it was designed specifically for a console. Like the layout was really done well for the controller, because I think before then it was sometimes I remember games like Player Manager being one of them, and that was very difficult to mess around with a mouse through a controller and stuff like that. But this was really specifically designed for the console. And to be honest with you, that market, there's not really much there anymore, because yes, we do see FM on Xbox, but it's just basically ported over from the PC version. And if we're honest, it's not the most easiest to play through a controller, as you mentioned earlier, Stu. One thing I do want to add before coming off this LMA is that one of the other things I really liked about is, do you remember the FA Cup draws? They used to have the presentation,
and
they had their own version of Match of the Day. Like there was when you watch the highlights. I loved doing that. After a game, I'd literally go through them all. It was very, very good for that time. I really enjoyed that game.
Fantastic. No, great memories there. And like I say, absolutely fantastically done in a console format, because I couldn't stand certain games. Like when they've tried Football Manager on console years ago, I'm trying to think which one I had. I just could not get into it. I don't know what it was. But moving on, I'm going to go to a game that my cousin had, my other cousin now, and I played this for a few years before I got a copy myself out of a bargain bin in Woolworths for $2.99. Wow. I went into Colwyn Bay, Chris. I went into Woolies. You know the story. And
you were nana, weren't you?
It would have been like 40, 50 quid full price. So it's like 2 years later, maybe. And this little nugget was in the bin, wasn't it? It was in the old bargain bin, the back of the box. Premier Manager 97 for the Mega Drive. What a game. Unbelievable. Hours and hours on this. Again, doing the basics correctly. The kids of today, I don't know, they wouldn't be able to get their heads around this, but the basics were done so well on this game, and played hours and hours on this. And like I say, I don't know why I didn't get it sooner. I was playing it at R. Daniels for years. Used to go there and hours and hours. And 2-player, you could do 2-player mode on it, which was great in the early days. Just everything about it. Again, you could build your stadium on this, couldn't you? Going back to that, you could extend, as you can see there. It's a bit pixelated, lads. But your memories, Chris, of this game, because I know you played it with me a lot.
Well, when you used to bring the Sega around, didn't you? And we sit in the back room in Park Road, and I don't think we even played 2 players. I think we were manager and assistant for all this as well. It always seemed to be me and you being that way, isn't it? We've just never been against each other, really. We just seem to like coexist together. But I always remember my memories of this and the frustration of trying to sign a top player. Because every time you put a bid in, some other fucker would jump in and you go straight to them. And you'd be like, what? Why? I'm a bigger club. What's going on? And you end up with someone you don't really want. And obviously that was exciting because when you actually did beat a team to a top player, you were dead excited, but it always didn't work out well. You know what I mean? Sometimes we bought these big players and they were garbage for you. But I just remember that. I remember being so frustrated in that back room sitting with you. Like,
oh, mate, it was
you were like, Cohan's Riedler's on the transfer. Let's go get him, go get him. And then some fucker would jump in, just like, you know, he's about to sign for us, and someone puts a bigger bid in, immediately goes to them, and we're like, why? You know what I mean?
I used to like getting Marco Gabbiadini. Obviously, he was at Derby at that point when he did a bit up north, didn't he? I'm trying to think where he played. Darlington as well. I always remember signing him on it. And you know what I liked? That old pixelated goal thing that came up that would be behind the goal at the games when you went to the match, and it was in green. So it was like not an LED board. I don't know what we call it, just like the scoreboard thing, the old school. I like that element of it. Obviously, for the time, it was great. And fast paced. I probably did a season too fast. I still do that now. I'm 100 mile an hour playing matches, you know, on Football Manager. I should take it slow. That's why I get sacked so soon, I think. But I know a lot of people that do it a lot slower and they're very meticulous. I'm very gung-ho and let's have a go, you know.
Well, that's your type of management then, isn't it? No wonder you're getting bloody sacked.
Well,
that game for me, mate, I had it exactly the same as you did, mate, on the Sega, and that it probably hooked me into manager games in general after that point, because I started to realise that I didn't only like just playing as like FIFA and all the rest of it. I actually enjoyed the process of like having your own team and being the manager, like. And, you know, obviously when you're younger, you go into your own sort of world and believe it's all real and all the rest of it. Yes. But the thing with this game that made it even more difficult is I believe this is the one where you had to start at the bottom. I mean, there's no starting at your favourite Premier League club. You had to start right in Division 3 that it was back then. And I remember many years, I think it was like between Leyton Orient or Brighton, clubs I've never really knew too many of the players. But after this game, I certainly knew them then. And you're spot on with the transfers, man. That was, as far as I recall, it was a horrible process, like a bidding war for a while, and it was pot luck if you were going to get him.
That's right. Yeah, that was really frustrating. I can remember walking away straight many times in that back room.
I'm surprised them little Mega Drive controllers were getting thrown at the screen actually when that was happening.
The Mega Drive, they were like a boomerang.
You felt like it was real. Do you know what I mean? It was like it felt like actuality, didn't it? Putting bids in.
I remember the cup games used to mean a lot to me on those games, and they were really hard from it being in that division to start with. But like the cup games, I'd specifically play on the slowest I could and take my time, try and do all this stuff because you only got like one go at it and then you were out, you know, for another season. So I used to try and make the most of them.
I'm going to move us on to the latest and greatest. And I think we will come back and do another episode on this because there's so many more games we want to cover. Yeah. I did want to cover Championship Manager 97-98, CM2. It was a fantastic game. What I think we'll do, lads, just because of time, we will come back at a later time and we will look in again because there's just so many. It's an absolute treasure trove, the old Football Manager simulator games, isn't it? You know, but going into the modern game, you know, the latest and greatest, I've got to say about Football Manager 2024. John, how are you finding that as a game? Have you managed to play that much or are you still doing your nostalgic games more so?
No, I'm playing. I go between two, but this one I've just literally started again since they've done the latest update. I was waiting for the winter update because I like to kind of do it. I feel like once you get the winter update through, it's kind of like really transparent to what's been happening on that current season, and they adjust a few of the players that maybe have been starting and all the rest of it. But as you can imagine, I've been my wonderful Tottenham on this one to begin with, and not too bad. I mean, the actual game in general, I think it's it's kind of got to a point where it's like it's almost so perfect in terms of the layout that you've kind of gone to the pinnacle. Like everybody knows the layout. It's very easy going, and it's easy to sort of, I think, maneuver around, and you can kind of switch off. Like if you want to play fast play, like you're saying, Stu, you've got the ability to do that because you can just chuck out all the other responsibilities to the assistant. You've got to hope the assistant's good, by the way. That is one key thing I'll say about that. But in general, how can you not like it? It's the only thing out there in a lot of respects. Like there's nothing else that's going to compete with this. So it's kind of there. I think for me, obviously, as a bit of an older fan, I'm always going to be nostalgic to those 90s. I'll tell you one thing that bothers me with this game is not only now do I go and watch Tottenham, and when I celebrate a goal, I have to wait because then I'm looking at the referee to see if he's going to check the flipping earpiece. Now, even out of reality, on my screen, I'm doing the same thing. I'm like, yes, like celebrating to my sad self in front of my screen. But then I'm like, oh, hang on, they've got to do a check, and it just takes just as long as it does in the ground. So, it's very, very true to real life.
Chris, how are you finding it? I know you hate me playing it on mobile. You've always said, why are you not playing it on a desktop or a laptop? I tell you, but some of the guys that are playing the mobile one are enjoying it this year, saying it is quite tough. Previous years, Chris's gripe with me was, well, it's easier, which it was. I think they have made the mobile version a bit harder this year. And obviously, I mean, it's a big thing that Netflix have got it. A lot of people are able to access it through Netflix. So, yeah, Chris, your feelings on it as a game this year? What have you like? What are your pros and cons of it, man?
Well, this is like, obviously, if you don't know, this is the last of its style. So Football Manager 2024 is the last we know of this kind of version of football management. Because in 2025, they're upping the ante, Stuart. They're going to Unity, and Unity make really, really good games, on the basis of graphics. And they're completely overhauling everything come this year. I think it's out this year. But they're changing everything. The layout isn't going to be the same anymore. Like I say, watching the games isn't going to be the same. They're completely overhauling everything. And I think this is where they need to go. They do, when you try and explain Football Manager to someone who, likes FIFA, but doesn't like Football Manager because, graphically, it's not a pleasing to the eye, is it? But for us, who like spreadsheets, obviously, we see more to that. So when you say to someone, look, get into it by picking a team, whatever team you want, and just immerse yourself into it. Immerse yourself into the tactics, the training. There's so much array of that in this game. Like they've made the scouting much better. So when you're looking for those wonder kids, and believe me, as soon as I start a new game, I'm out looking for every wonder kid I can find. And then I pass it on to my mate John, who's a massive fan of Football Manager. And then, throughout the year, then we pass on, have you found this guy? Have you found this guy? You know what I mean? But the scouting's really, really, really good. And, nothing much majorly has changed from like 23 to 22. There's little peeps and troughs they've added to the game because obviously 2025 which is going to be, from what they've said in a dev report, is going to be something that blows everyone's mind. But they want to, from what I read, is they want to bring new people into the game, but they don't want to upset the people like John, yourself, and me who are old school fans. They want to sort of intertwine the both modern and old school element together, so you can keep both fan bases happy, of the game.
Yeah.
But for 2024, it's still an amazing game. I mean, everything runs smoothly. I haven't had many bugs. I've had the couple where some reason my defender kicks it in the goal sometimes, and you're like, why?
So it's like Mason Holgate, and then he's smiling about it afterwards.
Yeah, there'll be some really odd things that happen in the game that I can't comprehend. You've got a really fast defender, and I've got a really slow striker, and somehow they still outrun my defender, and you're like, why? And as John says, the VAR is frustrating. But then saying that, John, actually, it's very pleasing when it goes for you, when they've scored a goal in the last minute and they say no goal and you're like, thank you.
Yeah.
But Football Manager as a whole, we know from Championship Manager, Sports Interactive, and as John said before, their scouting system is second to none. Because, you know what I mean? You buy these young talents from Brazil, Argentina, from wherever. And, you know what I mean? The more you play and you fall in love with them, they're your gem. You go and see them out in real life, and don't you? And then you see them go, say, Barcelona, or PSV or somewhere in the Premier League, and you're like, you're all like instantly think, I've got to follow this lad now. You know what I mean? It's like you follow this, become a supporter of this player, even though you don't really know if he's actually going to be as good as Football Manager say. But I mean, there's been loads of players like that, I think, over the years that I've followed, like Lucas Romero. There was Eldner Balanta. They were amazing. And I think it was 05 or 06. And literally, I followed them on, reading about it online. Like, obviously, they played in Brazil and Colombia until I think Balanta went to Basel. And these games are just so inspirational. Yeah, they probably do cause a lot of divorces in life. I'm probably, you know what I mean? I don't think that's a sugarcoat there, is it really? Because I think it does, because it's addictive. They say smoking's addictive, drinking's addictive. Football Manager's going to be added to that list because it's highly addictive. And what I like about it now, and John, you say you wait for the winter update, you don't need to do that anymore. Mod it. Yeah. The mods is what's really, brought me more love the game. It's like you add in things that should be in certain players that they couldn't get on the game because they're too young. I think I can't remember what the guy's called, Mad Scientist. He goes back and puts you back to, like, say, if you wanted 0102, he completely strips the Football Manager down, and everyone then is replaced by everyone who was in 0102. I think this one, he's done, I think it was 0507. It was 0403 or 0304 last year. I did 98-99 with him on Football Manager 22. And it's like you're going back and you're like, immediately, because you know the players then, don't you, who becomes massive, and you're jumping on him, like, you know what I mean? And like, right, get him in my youth system now. And yeah, I adore the game, and I think I probably played more of that than I've actually done anything in life, in all fairness. You know what I mean?
I'm with you.
I've got a couple of comments here. I'm reading them from my phone. We've got Graham Fisher, who's a massive wrestling fan. He goes to all the TNT shows. He's a great lad. Tramier fan. So I know he's quite vocal about Tramier. LMA Manager was the greatest. I only play Football Manager for any game now. Then we've got Dean Mitchell in Yorkshire. He's a big gamer, actually. He's got a good setup here as he plays simulator games and stuff. Truck driving, I think it was. Brilliant. He does lives and stuff. Fantastic.
Every simulator game for everything now.
He's got a good setup. I'm jealous because I just don't game, do I, these days?
No.
He went with LMA Manager. He went with Premier Manager 64. And he's gone for the one that we all love, Championship Manager 0102. So there's another, that's the four of us on a par with that. And then he's got Football Manager 2007. So some good comments there. I've also got Tom Perrott as well, my mate from Yorkshire. I'm just going to load it up now because he's put it into another page, because I know we had the comment as well. But it's good that we've all pretty much gone with 0102.
I think my mate John, I don't know I can't remember what Football Manager it was. I don't know if it was 20, and it was called Joan Arango. And he was Colombian, 14 years old, and you get him in, and he turned into an absolute world beater. I don't know where he is in life now, because I don't think it was, it's one of them, how they like to do little hidden gems of players, don't they? And all of a sudden they turn into be like this massive player, but in real life, no better than a semi-pro, I guess.
Perrott, I've got Tom. Chris. I've got Tom here as well. I've got Perrott, our good friend. Championship Manager 97-98, which I'm going to talk about. I said to John and Chris, obviously, we're going to come back on and do this again because there's just so many. He went for 98-99 as well. He went for number 3. He said number 3 was the best for him. And then he's done Football Manager 2005, which would have been the first one, wouldn't it? That was the first one they ever did.
Yeah, that's the first one they broke away, yeah.
Under the same company as CM, of course, as we know. was great too. He says, I have some funny stories in regards to it. We'll have to maybe bring him on for another one so he can tell us his stories about it. But yeah, great from a nostalgia aspect this episode, but great touching upon good depth there about the latest incarnation of Football Manager. Just fantastic. Love it. Absolutely love it. And the games are thriving, aren't they? Even now, they're really, really good. And just really great fun. I wish I could play them more. And I do want to go back, John, and play some of the old school ones again on those browser links and stuff. I'm really up for that, I tell you.
You should. And I think like it all comes back. You know what I mean? I think, when you were younger and, as John's saying, playing 0102, yeah, okay, you got to take away from what you play on like 2004, FM24 now, but everything comes back to, how it run and the players and watching the dots with the commentary underneath. And yeah, it's just nostalgia is just one of them where you miss it, don't you? But, like I say, you can mod it now and you can get that game pretty much running as the new Football Manager with that year, with all those players.
Amazing. Thanks, lads. Honestly, it's been brilliant. I love it. I know how much you love the management games, John. Also, the postal management games we used to do. That's another thing.
Christ, yeah.
I used to do them as well. I used to do M&E for Pure Fantasy Football. I can't think what the other one was called. All through Mal. Again,
amazing. That's another topic that we need to bring up.
Yeah, we should.
This is what I'm saying. The possibilities. The possibilities with this show are endless. Like it's crazy. It's crazy because we are mixing it up. I used to love Mail Day when it was, when you was coming back your results.
I used to wait for it to come through, and I'd be like, "Where is it? Where is the freaking letter? I'm waiting for my results."
Come on, you shit house. Where is it? Sorry.
I can't remember that last one me and you did, and I remember I got given Fortune Stuttard. Yeah. And I used to lie to them about players. I said, did you put the players in that, you say, you've got this player wrong. And I tell them I had Ronaldo Zidane. The next week when the post come through, I had Ronaldo R9.
You champion, you absolute.
It worked.
More than all these. Why didn't I cheat? I should have cheated.
I was telling you about it at the time. I was showing you my piece of paper with my squad on it.
I should have done what you did, but it used to be a match and shoot, didn't it? That's how we found out about it.
That's how I found out about it. It's exactly the same way.
Daniel was playing it in Bangor. He said, you need to get on this. And that's when I came back to you, didn't I? I said, we need to do this. But that's obviously another topic for another day because I'd like to go a bit lengthy with that. John, what's going on with you? Where can we find you in terms of socials? It's nice to just close out now.
Oh, my goodness. I'll let Chris close out while I find my stuff. Bear with me. Oh, I've got it. Don't worry. John Scott _ media. You can find me on Instagram. I have loads of, at the moment, I'm kind of away from wrestling for now, but I'm just doing a lot of videos. So you can check out some of my video work on there. Thank you so much for having me on, guys. It's been a blast.
Problem, mate.
What an absolute nostalgia moment. Like I'm going to go back and play them again.
It doesn't get much more nostalgic than that Inter Milan shirt. You've got the old Pirelli under there.
I've got the, let me turn around if I can. I've got the Ronaldo. I know Chris said he's your player and everyone else is. He's still, for me, the best player. Still the best.
Yeah, we said this on episode 1 or 9.
I listened, yeah.
He's leagues and leagues above everybody.
What a guy. And, that the injury for so many years and he still came back and bossed it when he came back. Unbelievable, that guy. Chris, do you want to just throw the football then and now socials for the viewers and listeners, and we'll close.
So we're on Twitter X, and I say this every week. I'm still saying Twitter because X sounds like a sex pill. So it's footy now and then. If you do it on Twitter, it's football now and then on Instagram, football now and then on Facebook, football now and then on YouTube. But we'll put all the links below before we send this episode out, so you can just click on it straight away. You can hear us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. Across
the board now, Google Podcasts, you name it. If you're not using Apple and Spotify, we are across the board. Thank you very much to Sports Social as well. Again, they list this, and fantastic to be with them because they got all the top podcasts, haven't they? They really have. So you know, they've got the who's who on there. So thank you to them. John, we'll get you on again as well to talk about Spurs, because I know you're enjoying
Wait
Big
till
Ange.
the end of the season.
Yeah. I know you're enjoying Big Ange. So
I am.
We'll get you on. We'll get you on about that as well. This has been episode 6 of Football Then and Now. We covered nostalgic computer games and management-based ones and the modern games as well. And it's been great having John on, John Scott, our guest today, our first guest on this show.
Yes, our first guest.
You're bestowed with that honour. And me and Chris will be back very, very soon for episode 7 of the show. Take care, everybody.
Football Then and Now, a fun look at football nostalgia and the modern game intertwined. Join us.